Police continue to investigate a Southside murder. A call to remove Greg Rickford as Indigenous Affairs Minister. And Canada releases its latest pandemic modeling. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Catalina Gillies. Thunder Bay Police are now investigating 2 shootings in the last 48 hours. The first one on Amelia Street yesterday took the life of 31-year-old Conrad Bannon. And then early this morning, police were called to a report of shots fired in the East End. The incidents have the deputy police chief concerned about the trend in gun violence. Corey Nordstrom has more.
The murder investigation continues on Amelia Street after police found a 31-year-old man shot to death in a second-floor apartment at Spence Court. Social media posts by family members have confirmed the victim's identity as Conrad Bannon. No arrests have been made yet, and police had few details to share about the murder. Deputy Chief Ryan Hughes says the shooting was not random and suggested that drugs may have played a role.
There is a drug problem within our city. We're highly aware of that. We say it every year. The investigators are still working on it. They're working with our drug unit and an intelligence unit to gather information regarding that.
Police are also looking into a shooting in the McNaughton Street area. It happened around 3 o'clock Friday morning. Police say the investigation is in its infancy, but they currently believe no one was hit by the bullets.
And it's in an area where there are known drug houses. It's not a random shooting. We just need any information that the public can give us to assist us in an investigation. So we have another team investigating that. They started early this morning. They're working hard, so hopefully we will get some positive results from that.
Hughes adds that these instances are a part of a larger, more troubling trend in the city.
We are concerned regarding the gun violence within the city. We've had 5 homicides this year, 3 attempts. Within the last month, we've had 3 homicides and 2 attempts.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
The Ontario NDP are calling Minister Greg Rickford to be removed from his post as Minister of Indigenous Affairs. New Democrat leader Andrea Horwath held a news conference this morning with residential school survivors. They say they don't feel comfortable with the Kenora MPP having a lead role in the search of former residential school burial grounds due to his past.
He is Indian Agent 2.0.
The distrust of Rickford stems from his time as a lawyer with a Kenora firm, which signed a federal settlement on behalf of residential school survivors back in the early 2000s. Some of those survivors claimed another lawyer with the firm improperly directed money from the settlement. However, a Law Society probe into the allegations was withdrawn. Indigenous Affairs critic Saul Mamakwa, who attended a residential school himself, says he can't understand how Rickford can remain in his current position with the previous allegations by other survivors.
Every time we hear Mr. Rickford talk about residential schools, the search for our missing children, or the crimes of the past, we are re-traumatized.
There's a lot of mistrust there in terms of what happened involving the Law Society. And so how can we trust an individual when we know that there's unfinished business?
Rickford has not responded to the call for his removal, but the Premier's office released a statement today. Spokesperson Ivana Yelich says Minister Rickford was decades removed from the events that were complained about. Every single allegation against the member of this law firm was withdrawn or dismissed. Any interferences to the minister and these allegations are completely false. Some Ontario families are being reunited with their fur babies. The Ford government has eased regulations around the province's pit bull ban. Seized dogs will now be released. Under the clause, 4 kinds of dogs were banned: Pit Bull Terriers, Staffordshire Bull Terriers, American Staffordshire Terriers, and American Pit Bull Terriers. As a former pit bull owner himself, the Premier became personally invested in seeing this legislation through. A 62-year-old marathon man was airlifted to the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center yesterday after sustaining serious injuries in a crash on Highway 17 east of Marathon. It happened just before 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. According to Ontario Provincial Police, a minivan crossed the center line and collided with a tractor trailer. The driver of the minivan was first sent to a local hospital before being airlifted to the regional. The driver of the tractor trailer sustained minor injuries. Police continue to investigate the collision. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 2 more COVID-19 cases today. One comes from a district community, while the other is on a First Nation. Both exposure sources are still unknown at this time. There are now 23 active cases across the district. That's 1 more than yesterday and the most since June 19th. Over in the Northwestern Health Unit, there's 1 new case coming from the Kenora area. The NWHU now has 5 active cases. Plans are in the works to start allowing parents and other spectators inside local high school gymnasiums to watch indoor varsity sports like basketball and volleyball. The current COVID-19 protocols only allow students, coaches, school staff, and the officials inside the gyms. A growing number of people have been calling for spectators to be allowed, especially after the province removed capacity limits for arenas and other indoor venues. Officials with the Lakehead and Catholic School Board say they've been actively working with the Ministry of Education and the Health Unit to investigate the viability of having spectators at indoor sports events, and they expect to be able to offer an update shortly. Medical Officer Dr. Janet DeMille says she's aware of the call for changes.
School boards and schools have to follow the direction of the Ministry of Education, and I do understand that the guidance on that seems a bit unclear. And I know ourselves, as well as other health units, and I think school boards are asking for more clarity about that and the rules around indoor spectators at school-related sports. I do agree that sometimes it does seem to differ from what happens outside of school settings, and this is one big example.
The playoffs for junior and senior girls basketball and boys volleyball are scheduled to start in mid-November, and many parents are calling for fans to be allowed in the stands for those big games. T-Baytel is looking to address the critical need for doctors in Northwestern Ontario with their new T-Baytel for Good Entrance Award Fund. The proceeds will be used to give 3 medical students a scholarship each year. T-Baytel will match every dollar donated up to $10,000. The new scholarship fund will support the region's medical students and keep them rooted in local communities. NASM is hoping to raise $30,000 for the T-Baytel Entrance Award Fund per year to award 3 students from Northern Ontario with a $10,000 grant. T-Baytel CEO Dan Topatai and NASM's Dr. Bill McCready say there's a critical need for doctors in the North, and this fund will help students with their financial challenges.
Student bursaries are an essential part of students being able to enter medical school. It's an extremely expensive proposition. As I said earlier, the average student leaves their undergraduate medical education with $190,000 worth of debt. That's a huge amount to take on.
And we understand the need that exists for doctors and specialists. I've heard as many as 20,000 people inside of Thunder Bay alone who don't have a family doctor. So we recognize this as an opportunity to show our support, to be able to keep doctors in Northern Ontario as much as possible.
For the 3rd time this year, there's been a Thunder Bay grain cargo record set at a local elevator. It happened yesterday at the Viterra terminal off Maureen Street. Officials from Canada's Steamship Line say their vessel, the CSL Welland, managed to load 31,362 metric tons of wheat. The company credits their team, the Viterra crews, and the Port of Thunder Bay for helping them set the record. The big shipment is 219 tons more than the Superior grain elevator managed to load onto the Captain Henry Jackman in early October. In order to maximize grain cargo, it requires a perfect mix of load distribution, vessel size, water levels, and weather. The Welland is now headed for Montreal, where the big shipment of grain will be offloaded and then placed onto ocean-going vessels for international markets. A community within a community is possibly the best way to explain what Aspen Court will be for seniors in Atikokan. Residents and officials gathered yesterday to celebrate the official grand opening of the new retirement facility. Adam Riley has the story.
10 months ago, residents and officials in the town of Atikokan gathered to mark the start of construction for Aspen Court, a $14 million, 38-unit supportive seniors complex. After months of work and minor hiccups, officials gathered once again to celebrate the official ribbon cutting. Mayor Dennis Brown says for years the town has needed a place like Aspen Court and believes it will benefit the community and its residents.
There are a lot of seniors that want to have a place like this where they can, deal with other seniors, and but there's still places to walk around here and have, discussions with other seniors in here in the common room.
For Community Living Atikokan Executive Director Jim Turner, Thursday's events brought a sigh of relief after 3.5 years of proposals and negotiations.
From the time that I went to my board at Community Living Atikokan and proposed that Community Living Atikokan take on the building of Aspen Court, to working with CMHC through the National Housing Strategy to secure the mortgage for it, seeking funding through fundraising, through NOHFC, and seeing the speed at which the building went up, it was phenomenal. And getting the keys last week was sort of the cherry on top.
Another benefit experienced by the town was the more than $2.5 million being pumped into the local economy through contractors shopping local, hiring local, and staying in the community. Built by the same company that built Marathon's Peninsula Manor, CGV Developments, Aspen Court features 1- and 2-bedroom units, each with their own independent heating and cooling systems, a common area, laundry facilities, and even a salon. Turner says a key part of what made the building possible was the in-kind support from the town of Atikokan.
One of the big things was the donation of the 4.5 acres that this is built on. The town waived the development charges. They waived the connection to the water and sewer services. They waived tipping fees at the dump. So it was all in-kind contribution. We needed that to demonstrate to CMHC that there was support from the community.
Turner says all but 10 units have been filled and believes as seniors visit their friends who live at Aspen Court, over time, those units will begin to fill up. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Well, Fiona, it was a pretty mild day out there today, and it wasn't too chilly, which I was happy about.
Well, that's good. If you got up first thing in the morning, it was a bit chilly then, -5, wind chills -7, but we warmed up to double digits, 10 Celsius. Remember, normally at this time of year, we're lucky to see 4 as a high. So 10, that was a nice way to top out the day. And winds very light. In fact, for part of the day, they were completely calm, gusting only up to 11 kilometers per hour from the southwest. That was under mostly cloudy skies for much of the day. Now, if you wanted to see the sun, you kind of have to head westward. They've got some really nice clearing, beautiful skies in Fort Frances. They too are currently at 10. Atikokan, though, 13 at this hour. So gorgeous there. 11 in Dryden, 7 in Kenora. Red Lake and Sioux Lookout managing 12 Celsius. Again, under a whole lot of sunshine this afternoon. Pickle Lake at 11, 8 in Armstrong and Greenstone. That's under mostly cloudy skies. Marathon matching those temperatures. And Sault Ste. Marie also mostly cloudy. They're currently at 9 Celsius. Now, here in the city of Thunder Bay, we are going to see an unusually mild night. Normal overnight low for this time of year is around -5, -6. We're going to be on the plus side at 7 Celsius, so not much of a drop in temperatures. Unfortunately, won't be able to do much stargazing out there in those mild temperatures because it is expected to be mostly cloudy, winds flowing from the southwest. Now, that unfortunately is going to set the stage for the weekend. We are expecting mild temperatures to continue well above normal for the weekend. However, unfortunately, it comes with rain first thing on Saturday, and then on Sunday, a little bit more clouds. So you're going to have to take the good with the bad this weekend, and I'll have more details on what will follow next week later on in the news hour.
Thanks for that, Fiona. Well, Canada's top health officials are optimistic about the current state of the pandemic, with new modeling being released. We'll have details as your Friday news hour continues.
progress in slowing epidemic growth across most jurisdictions in Canada.
Canada's top health officials are cautiously optimistic about the current course of the pandemic. Today, the Public Health Agency released new modeling showing the numbers could continue to move in the right direction. But as Bill Fortier reports, there are still several key areas of concern.
A pandemic now stretching into its 20th month is getting a promising prognosis from the country's top doctor.
Over the past month, we've made good progress in slowing epidemic growth across most jurisdictions in Canada.
Daily new cases and hospitalizations are down, and new modeling shows the numbers will continue to decline if current trends continue. That is a big if, according to physicians.
I think it depends on what we do to keep cases down. Unfortunately, there's been some inconsistency across Canada.
Despite positive trends, health officials warn winter could be tough, especially in areas where fewer people are vaccinated and case numbers remain high, like areas of Saskatchewan, northern Alberta, and southern Manitoba.
So it's a serious situation there. Once the virus takes hold and you get that intense community spread, looking for any targets, it gets very difficult to, push back against that.
So it's not unexpected that we could see some bumps in the trajectory during the months ahead.
And there's concern for school-age children. The highest rate of infection right now is in kids under 12. But there's also optimism there with potential approval of vaccines for kids 5 and up soon.
I think it's still a number of weeks, as we just said, for the pediatric vaccine.
Today, a former U.S. FDA official suggested the pandemic could be over in that country by January. Dr. Tam was not ready to make a similar prediction here just yet. Bill Fortier, CTV News, Edmonton.
There is some potential big good news today. Drug maker Pfizer announcing that its clinical trial for its antiviral pill has been so successful, it's ending testing and submitting the data for FDA approval.
3 days of the symptoms, you have now 89% protection from disease. I think this is one of the biggest medical advances for a single drug in virology in a long time.
The news comes just 1 day after Merck's antiviral COVID pill was approved for use in the UK. Merck says its medication cuts the risk of hospitalization and death in half for those at the highest risk of developing severe COVID-19. Canadian infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh says the pills shouldn't be seen as a substitute for the vaccine.
Prevention is the best, right? Prevention should be number one. You've got to avoid getting COVID-19 in the first place. And I think we should, this is not a should we do this versus this. The answer is we should vaccinate. That is always the right answer. Prevention is key. This is really for people who have COVID-19 infections who are at risk of severe infection. Maybe that's a breakthrough infection. Maybe that's someone who's remained unvaccinated. But yeah, I wouldn't say that this is a reason to not get vaccinated.
And breaking news out of BC this afternoon, the Supreme Court has delivered its ruling in the battle for control over the board of Rogers Communications. In the decision, the judge ruled a newly constituted board under the leadership of Edward Rogers is legitimate. It comes after Rogers removed and replaced 5 directors, while his mother and sisters maintain the decision should have involved a vote by shareholders. The SPAC comes amid the company's plans to buy rival Shaw Communications for $26 billion, pending regulatory approval. The federal government has announced it will raise and then re-lower the Canadian flag at federal buildings to mark Indigenous Veterans Day and Remembrance Day, but then the flags will return to full hoist. The Canadian flag has been lowered ever since the first discovery of unmarked graves at a former residential school in Kamloops, BC. As Creason Ajkate tells us, the decision has been accepted by both Indigenous leaders and the Royal Canadian Legion.
For 158 days, flags have been at half-mast at all federal buildings, following the discovery of the 215 unmarked graves at the Kamloops Secwepemc in BC. After much debate on whether or not to raise the flag by Remembrance Day, the tradition will continue, a scenario accepted by both Indigenous leaders and the Royal Canadian Legion.
I'm fine with it in the means that we inherited this together as Canada, as Indigenous people. We must understand that we are going to be in a state of mourning, of healing for a few years.
It's the flags at the National War Memorial on November 11th, and they will begin the ceremony fully hoisted. They will be lowered during the ceremony in respect to our veterans.
But there is still no plan on what will happen to the flags after Remembrance Day. Cowessess First Nation found 751 graves last June, and Chief Cadmus Delorme says the flags must remain at half-mast to honor the Indigenous children found and those yet to be found.
There are 160 residential schools in this country, and less than 10 have told their story. So we have a ways to go. The flag, to keep it lower, to honor the unmarked graves, the children who never made it home, is something we all must reflect as Canadians.
Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole says he wants the flags to be raised after Remembrance Day.
Mr. Trudeau put no parameters, no protocol around having the flag come back up. He missed the window following the first day of Truth and Reconciliation.
But for Muskowhegan residential school survivor James Desjardins, he says bringing the flags back up will send the wrong message to Indigenous people.
It's sort of bypassing the whole thing, like
to tuck it under the rug and let's get on with life and stuff like that, you know. Let's move ahead and put that behind us.
Chris Nachkate, CTV News, Ottawa.
A funeral was held in Washington, D.C. for Colin Powell today, the former general who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and later as the first Black U.S. Secretary of State. M. Nguyen reports.
A final national farewell to the highly decorated and well-respected General Colin Powell, his son Michael paying tribute.
I took his hand, just as he had taken mine decades before. I knew everything was not going to be okay. I wanted him to be at peace. I felt my father's love in that hand.
The soldier turned diplomat whose family emigrated from Jamaica rose from humble beginnings to become one of America's most prominent leaders. Powell served in both Republican and Democratic administrations and was widely praised across the political spectrum. His former Deputy Secretary, Richard Armitage.
I don't think we share often enough how we really feel with our family. Sometimes I think we take it for granted. But I want you to know that he didn't take it for granted.
Within the walls of Washington's National Cathedral, President Joe Biden, former Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush, as well as former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Biden describing Powell as a warrior who put country before self.
I've heard it asked, are we still making his kind? I believe the answer to that question is up to us.
Powell's life was not without controversy. In 2003, he delivered a speech to the United Nations trying to make the case for why America had to invade Iraq, claiming Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. No weapons were ever found, and Powell's reputation was forever tarnished. Powell died of complications from COVID-19. He was also battling blood cancer and Parkinson's. He is survived by his wife, 2 daughters, and son. He was 84.
Colin Powell was a great lion with a big heart. We will miss him terribly.
Powell served 30 years in uniform. He was already planning to get his booster shot when he fell ill to a breakthrough COVID-19 infection. M. Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.
Turning now to the latest on the COVID-19 front in the U.S., including more on Pfizer's new antiviral pill and the fight over the Biden administration's new vaccine mandate. Here's Dan Lieberman.
Pfizer saying early trial results of its antiviral COVID pills shows the risk of hospitalization or death is reduced by 89%. More than 1,200 people included in the study were considered at high risk for developing severe COVID and started taking the pills within 3 days of developing COVID symptoms. This as new data from the CDC and HHS show nearly 60,000 fewer patients were hospitalized with COVID-19 compared to 2 months ago. Meanwhile, opposition to the Biden administration's new vaccine mandate covering 2/3 of the American workforce continues to grow, sparking potential legal action from 26 states where Republican leaders are vowing to fight.
It is unbelievable that the federal government would issue such an unlawful order.
The new workplace COVID rules, which will be enforced starting January 4th, applies to businesses with more than 100 employees who must get the COVID shot or be subject to weekly testing. Healthcare workers, no matter the size of their employer, must be vaccinated. Dr. Fauci defending the mandates at a hearing on Capitol Hill Thursday.
We know that vaccines absolutely save lives, and we know that mandates work.
But for business owners like Michigan restaurant owner Jeff Lobdell, the mandates he fears could worsen the worker shortage.
I might lose 20% of my workforce. We'd have to further reduce hours. Some of my locations might close.
Republican state officials reacting swiftly to the new mandate.